us, both in amazing ways and not so much. We're Ben and Sia, and welcome to the Gnaw on This Business Bites podcast. This show is all about real life things we all deal with every day, how they relate to business, and how to make some sense out of our daily chaos. Welcome to the show. And welcome back to another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites. I'm Ben and this is Sia. And this week we're going to talk about just because you got a fancy title doesn't make you a great podcast guest. I've been podcasting for 10 years. Sia's been at this a long time too. We got a lot of friends of ours that are in this business. And it's one thing that podcasters talk about time and time again is, was that person a good guest? Was it worth having him on the show? Yeah, okay, they've got a big audience, but does that mean anything? Let me tell you what that means. It says you have somebody, you have them on the show, and you think, okay, they've got 100,000 people that follow them on Instagram. All of a sudden you're going to get 100,000 people that are going to look at it because obviously they're going to share your podcast with all their people. Most don't. The bigger the guest I have found, unless you can give them something that is valuable to them, that all of a sudden you're asking them questions that they've never heard before, they'll give them a story that they can tell to their people on their own, are not going to share your podcast with their people. They're more than happy to be a guest. They're more than happy to expand their reach to your audience, but not necessarily are you going to get access to theirs. And, this has happened to me where I've had big name people on my show and you do a great job and they get all excited and you pass it over to their media people and their media people have one listen to the podcast and go, we're not sharing this. And, you're disappointed, but you shouldn't be. They are busy. These are busy people with busy lives. You're not the only podcast that they've ever been on. These people are on 30, 40, 50 podcasts a year. They're going to share the ones that put them in the best light, that enable them to tell the story that they want to tell and give them the tools to be able to tell that easily, effectively, and enable them to shine. And don't have you getting in the way of them shining. Because if all of a sudden they look at the thing and they say, well, really it wasn't about me, it was about them. It was about the host. Well, I'm not going to promote this. Or if they do promote it, they cut out the parts that were about them and they share it as snippets and they don't even mention you. Mm-hmm. I've had that happen as well. So we need to think as podcast hosts, why are we having this person on there in the first place? If we sit there and go, okay, this person has really great insight, they're brand aligned with my podcast, they're going to give my audience some really good information, and I'm going to learn something out of it, great, then have them on. But if this person is not going to, if you're counting on this person to share it with their audience, and that's the only reason that you want to do it because you're trying to reach their audience, think again, because 9 out of 10 times that's not going to happen. Sia, let's know on this.
Oh, 100, ding, 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 ding. I cannot tell you how many times, and I'm guilty of it myself. I had a big name on my podcast, beyond stoked, thought, hey, this will be my moment to get some real good crossover. Their network will find out about me, discover me, and oh my God, I'll go viral and blah, 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 blah. Or worse, when that big talent wants to charge you for their time to be on your podcast. And I've seen people pay to get those big talents on there and still get zero value in return. It breaks my heart.
That hurts.
It hurts. It absolutely hurts because you're like, wait, I just paid and you've done absolutely nothing for me. I understand if it's free and it's like, okay, fine, free is free, right? You get what you not pay for.
Get what you paid for.
Right? So you're right, man. Just because you get a big name don't mean that their audience is going to translate to you. Now, your audience might be interested in that big name, and that might be fascinating, but that's about it. It's a one-time pop. So maybe, yeah, maybe that one big name pulls in more viewers, but they never come back again.
True.
And that's the other thing is like if you want some like a viral, episode, go for it. If you want a sustainable growth, and far as like building your community for your podcast and your following, then you may want to consider maybe a different tactic. And it may not necessarily be that one big name. Maybe if you have to pay, take that money and pay for quote lesser names and have more of them. So that way you can build up a community because now they see a roster of amazing people versus just one person. So, yeah.
I agree. I mean, the luckiest, smartest, whatever you want to call it, thing that I ever did is I interviewed somebody that was a fairly large name. They're very successful across North America. They run an incredibly large company, and I saw a picture of them with two other celebrities at an event, and I mentioned this to the first person. I said, "So." Says, how well do you know these people? Because you all have incredible perspectives. How well do you know this? Well, I actually know this person. I don't know this person very well. I says, well, could you make an introduction? Absolutely. And 15 minutes later, I get a phone call from the other person going, I hear you were talking to so-and-so, and he said that I should be on your podcast. When do you want to do this? They introduced me to the third person.
That's cool.
And therefore, and then it got spiraled on from there. But it's a matter of sitting there going, how do you give those people something that's beneficial for them? I was lucky enough that the first person saw enough value in being on my podcast. They felt that the show was good enough. It was good enough quality. It was, it was relevant. It was thoughtful. It was thought provoking that they thought, yeah, I'm willing to introduce my friends to you.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they never will.
Yes.
If they're going to be embarrassed, if they think that you're going to go out there and try to sell these people, if you think you're going to be a bother to these people, they're certainly never going to give you their phone numbers. They're certainly not going to give you their email addresses. And we as podcast hosts need to sit there and say, we need to build our reputation day by day, show by show, episode by episode, and warrant these things. So when these people do come on board, we realize that thank them and say, listen, who else would you be willing to introduce me to? Or, did you enjoy the show? Great. What did you enjoy about the show? Is there anybody that you think that you know of that is looking for media attention right now that would like to be on the show? And I think we need to sit there and advocate for ourselves in a way, but we need to be respectful of the people and realize that even if we get the big name on the show, doesn't mean that we're going to get their audience. It just means this is a person of value or somebody with insights or something with real knowledge that are going to add benefit to our audience. And it's not necessarily we're going to see one person from their particular audience, because there's no guarantee that they're going to share it.
like you said, more often than not, it's not. It's not. Let's go on the flip side of not flip side, but here's another angle. When I think of title, I think of like, let's say a CXO. Yeah. All right. And I've been pitched so much, not only just for, our shows, but for clients' shows, we produce. And man alive, I've seen so many pitches for, you got to get our CEO or CXO on, and they're amazing. And then you actually watch their video reels of their past guesting, and you look at them and you're like, this person's boring AF. Like, I don't care if you're the, president of the United States. If you're boring, I ain't getting you on, And full disclosure, we know no president's not, there's definitely some interesting, but still.
Hey, even Trump would have been an interesting guest. Whether you like him or you don't like him, he still would have been an interesting guest.
It would be interesting.
Same with Nixon. I would have loved to have had Nixon on my show.
Again, would have been an interesting conversation. I mean, it is. I find the most interesting people don't care for their titles, but if you're looking to get the greatest content, more bang for your buck of whatever it is that your topic is about, don't get wrapped up in the title.
Yeah.
Get wrapped up in the person. spend some time and either talk to them and get to know them. But if their time is that limited, watch their reels, see how they, work, what's their vibe, and see if they're right fit.
Because you can always listen to what other podcasts that they've been on. You can always see them on YouTube. There's so much different ways to find people on the show and just say, you know what? We'd really like to have you on the show, but I've been watching a bunch of your stuff and it just doesn't mesh with what our audience is looking for right now.
Yep.
And it's okay to say no to a guest.
100%.
It's okay to say, I'm sorry, but your brand or your message doesn't dovetail with what my client, with what my audience needs. And that's your job as a host. It's to sit there and be a conduit to your tribe. That's your number one thing, is take care of your tribe first, take care of your guests second, and they will take care of you. But you need to constantly take care of your tribe, because they're the ones that are going to be there week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out.
I can't shake my head more as far as I can't I feel it and I know it. Yes, Ben. So here's one more thing too. And this is something that just really irked me. If you are pitching for people like your boss or whatever, or if this is your business that you pitch guests to try to get on other people's podcasts, do me a favor. Just click on that person's link. If you're hitting them up on LinkedIn of all places, and be like, hey, I've got an amazing CEO in underwater basket weaving. Make sure that what they do or their personality or interest falls in accordance of the podcast you're pitching. Nothing irks me more than that. Hey, I've got Mary, CEO of Underwater Basket Weaving, would be great for your,
nuclear physics podcast.
Bingo. Man, nothing pisses me off harder and faster. And that's doing an injustice to Mary. If you're representing Mary to get her on podcasts, unfortunately, Mary, I would judge you that you would hire these people to promote you. And therefore you're ex-nayed in all my clients. I won't even consider you, just by virtue. I've been annoyed enough that nope, I've already blackballed you. So for those that are doing that, just a cautionary note, that does happen. Just saying.
It happens more often than not. My attitude is, have you listened to my podcast? That's the first thing I ask somebody. It says, when somebody pitches me something, it says, tell me how this person dovetails with my audience and how they add value. And 9 times out of 10, the pitcher goes away and never comes back. Because they've just blind pitched. They've got a list of podcasts and they're pitching everybody.
Yeah.
And guess what? If they're pitching everybody, the people that they're pitching are either have the wrong people pitching them, or they don't have any real value themselves.
Yeah. Man alive, man. I don't care. Just because you rose up in the ranks and you got yourself a title, don't make you any more interesting than,
I want to know your stories. I want to know what makes you interesting, unique, and different. And what have you learned along the way? And how have you fallen and cracked your nose? And
be willing to share.
Exactly.
I can't tell you how many people I've seen with titles that are like, oh no, I must be a certain way. I must present myself. So I will be rigid. It's like, if you're going to treat the podcast as a Q&A, I have no interest in you either. Right.
Exactly.
No one does. Not just me selfishly as a host, but the audience does not like Q&A, people. So be interactive with your host. Please, for the love of all things, be interactive with your host. I don't care if you're nervous. If you're nervous, then start practicing somewhere else, and be conversational.
Exactly.
I'm being poo-pooey.
I think that's a good place to leave it. So let's gnaw on this, guys. Figure out why you want to be on a podcast, what value you add, and the stories you want to tell. And then let's have a great time at it. I'm Ben.
I'm Sia.
We'll see you soon.
Hey. Thanks for listening to another episode of Gnaw on This, Business Bites. If you liked what you heard, we most humbly ask that you like, share, and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to communicate more effectively within your organization, contact Ben at yourbrandmarketing.com or me at brilliantbeammedia.com. We can help you build your community, brand awareness, and personality through digital content and podcasting. We cannot wait to hear from you. So see you next week for another episode of Gnaw on This Business Bites.